Hey, what up, everybody? Wanted to make a quick video about everything that's going on right now, offer some little perspective. Once again, I know that I'm just another opinion getting thrown out in the sea of opinions out there. But, you know, sometimes if you can offer a little bit of reason here and there, and sometimes it can spread like wildfire. So that's why I choose to make some of these videos, is because I feel a pressing on my heart, usually from God, or just something I'm very concerned about. So first and foremost, before I get into what I want to say, I just want to make it very clear that I believe, you know, without a doubt, that racism exists. So I'm at no means going to sit here and try to act like racism doesn't exist. Just look at the prison system. You go to a prison, everything's broke up into races. Okay, that's about as biggest evidence you can find right there of racism. I'm also not going to be sitting here trying to pretend like, you know, like I know what black people feel like, or this and that, or like somehow like I can understand their struggle, or this and that. I can only speak for myself. I'm just gonna add some little bits of reason to the conversation, I hope. Ultimately, what I see going on right now, it's such a trap, man, and it's everybody's fallen into it. Everybody is being pitted versus each other in this country. I mean, it's crazy, man. Like, I think a lot of it is more a reality on social media and on the mainstream news than it actually is a reality when you actually go out and you actually talk to people. I talked to several people today, white, black, whatever. And, a lot of times what I see is that, people ain't holding to these narratives like it's being pumped up to us. I had a shirt that says Black Rifles Matter, and I wore the shirt out, and most of the people that would come up and give me high fives and this and that about the shirt and be like, oh man, I like that shirt, they were black people, right? But the people that would give me the little sneery looks and look at me all, angry and stuff, were white people. And my shirt is just saying, hey, Black Rifles Matter. Second Amendment matters. And it matters for everybody. It matters for all races. Gun rights is a big deal, man. If you're a black person in America, gun rights is a big deal. The fact that you're able to lawfully carry weapons, that wasn't like that for many years. This was something that was a civil rights issue. So now it's all under fire. And that's one of the biggest things I see going on right now. I'm just going to kind of just rail off a couple things that I think that are important that maybe people aren't identifying and seeing right now. But for the longest time, the Second Amendment has been under attack. People have not been able to, get guns, and their rights to bear arms have been stripped away, and it's been progressively happening. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there that are fully armed, but then there's a lot of people that aren't. They either can't get it because they screwed up at some point in their life. Maybe they got a felony, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's not even a felony. You just get, you get a, you're a kid, you get an assault 4 or something like that. You can't even get a gun. So that's been going on for a long time, right? Now, what I see going on with this looting and all these protests, it's like if you let your kids throw a fit because they couldn't get something, and they start running around the house and they start breaking stuff, and if you give into it and be like, all right, I'm gonna give you that toy or whatever it is that you want now because you threw a big old fit, and you start breaking stuff in the house. Well, essentially that's what's going on right now. Right now, through all the protesting, through all the looting, and all the violence that's going on out there, politicians are starting to pander to these people. I saw several articles today that in LA and in other cities that the mayors are going to start slashing the budgets for the to fund the police department. And this is a recipe for disaster, man. So people's gun rights have been restricted, and then they're forced to have to rely on the police, right? But now the police are going to be defunded, and at the same exact time, you have empowered people. There's been a line that's been crossed in this country in the last week to where people now think they can get away with whatever. That as long as they come out in numbers, they can loot, riot, steal, murder, do whatever, and they can get away with it. It ain't about the protests. It ain't about racial inequality. There's been a line that's been crossed here, and it ain't good, man. This is a recipe. So you're gonna tell me that stripping people of their gun rights, while at the same time making them forced to rely on the police department, which is now being defunded, and leaving people completely vulnerable to lawless criminals, is a good thing? I would say that right there, if people started to stop and reason within themselves and start to understand, like, oh, wait a minute, this can escalate things even further. And that's why you're starting to see, like, people come out and they're protecting their businesses. They're protecting the things that they worked hard for, black, white, brown, whatever. And they're out there and they're strapped up and they're ready to go because there's nothing else that's going to protect them. But what if you can't get a gun, right? Like, what if you don't know how to protect yourself? This is a big issue, man. That we're opening up a can of worms in this country. People are just reacting. They're just reacting to all sorts of stuff. Nobody can look at factual information anymore. Nobody can research anything out anymore. And we are really going down a bad way here with this whole thing, with the way that this rioting has escalated into police defunding. And listen, I am not for building up the police department and the military, and I've never actually been for that institution of power. I think police have always had way too much power. So, and this is something else I wanted to bring up. So obviously I'm a white dude. I'm about as white as you can get. Okay. Back when in my younger years, I had a lot of run-ins with the police, and they were not good. I'll just give you a couple situations that happened. One time, I won't get into all the details, but I threw a party, and some people at the house that I was throwing a party, there was like 100 people at my house. They went and they robbed some people in my neighborhood in the middle of the night, and they were cops that got robbed. Anyways, they came to my house. The police came to my house. They arrested me without cause, and they questioned me until like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I had like $300 something on me at the time. And they took that money and they took it as evidence. I never saw that money till light of day, and they charged me with obstruction of justice because I wouldn't name somebody. So, now I wasn't exactly living right back in those days. But what they did was not right either. And it showed me real quick, like, the power that they can wield on somebody, that you're pretty much at their mercy. Here's another example. Several times I've been in cars that and this all happened back in the day as well. I was in cars where the cop pulled us over. He ran my name, said I had a warrant for my arrest, and it was on a Friday. So I end up spending the whole weekend in jail, and I go before the judge, and it turns out it's an error. That either they didn't clear a warrant, or it was some kind of computer error of some sort. I spent the weekend in jail 2 different times on this. Here's another time. I'm walking home. This is when I was in my early 20s. I'm walking home. It's like 11 o'clock at night or something like that. And and I go to go pee behind a bus stop. I didn't know there was a cop across the street, but I wasn't doing anything wrong either. You're walking home at 11 o'clock at night, you got to go to the bathroom, go behind a bus stop or whatever, right? Well, anyways, this cop rolls up. I come out there, I got my hands up, everything else. He cuffs me, and he whoops my butt. He after he cuffed me, he's slamming my head into the bench. He's doing all sorts of stuff. And he's a Mexican cop, okay? I'm obviously a white man. Was this a racist thing? I never thought of it as a racist thing at all. Anyways, I got a $1,300 medical bill out of that situation. And I could go on. I've had run-ins with other cops that were good, and I can continue on and on and on because I had a rough background and I got into a lot of trouble in my younger years. But after I gave my life to God and began to live for Jesus, things changed with my relationship with the police. But I had a lot of hatred for the police, a lot. I felt mistreated. I felt disrespected. The way they just can just do whatever they want to you, charge you with stuff, completely lie about it, steal from you, and in many cases they'll just run up and kill you. And so I say all that to say this: it don't always have to do with race, and the statistics show that. Statistics will show you that police shoot white men more than they shoot black men. And police are also black people. It's like people seem to forget this. There's a lot of black cops out there. There's a lot of Mexican cops out there. There's a lot of different races that are cops. And they get a power trip and they shoot and beat up and do illegal stuff all the time on whoever, and it doesn't matter your race at all. So I've never been one to condone building up a police state, where somehow by having more power in the hands of the police that things are going to be better. But at the same time, after I gave my life to Jesus, I began to live a different way, and I began to realize, when you live right, there's a different way that a lot of cops will treat you then. And I'm not trying to say that these cops are good, okay? Because there's other stuff too, just briefly, I'll mention one more thing that really disgusted me about the police is, I was involved in a homicide years ago where my friend, he ended up stabbing his dad to death. He murdered him with knives. And I won't go into all the details of it, but I had to sit up in the apartment after it happened. And they took my friend away to the hospital while his dad was laying there dead, and there's blood all over the place. The cops were in there, and they wouldn't let me leave because it was a crime scene, and it was an upstairs apartment, so they had to wait for the detective to show up. And they were sitting there, and they're standing next to the dead body of this dude's dad, and they were just talking about all sorts of just stuff. Just completely had no respect at all for this man's dead body. Had no respect for whatever. I mean, it was just, I could just sense the evil and the desensitized nature that these cops carried. And, that was one of the moments where I saw how, like, a lot of times their humanity is broken. A lot of these police officers, man, they've just been around so much evil, and they've just been around so much, violence and all sorts of stuff, that it's like they just don't know how to, like, treat people correctly anymore, And I'm not saying this about all cops, because cops are just people, But I'm saying that the institution of the police, it inherently gives people power. And if people are corrupt and evil and wicked, they're going to abuse that power. And guess what? A lot of people are corrupt, evil, and wicked. And this is just how it rolls. So to me, the power should be limited to the police. Back to what I was originally saying. The power should be limited in the police, but the power should be given to the people, just like it's written in the Constitution. An armed people it's a polite society. It's a safe society when people are armed and they know how to defend themselves and their family from people that want to do harm. And then people that want to do harm, they're going to think twice about actually, running up on people and trying to take advantage of people. I guarantee you. I mean, just go look it up. There's cities all over the United States where looters wanted to come. They wanted to do protesting, but then you got also this other criminal element to it all that just want to loot and vandalize and riot and whatnot. And in these cities, people are armed up, man. They got strapped up and they protected their businesses, and guess what? Nothing happened. Okay, but then you got other cities like New York City, all right, where New York, it's like it's impossible to legally own a firearm. You got to jump through so many hoops. It's insane. And what happened there? Businesses were overran, completely overran. People are focused on the protest and racial injustice and all this and that. People need to understand what happened in New York City should be a wake-up call to what's really going on here, man. I read some tweets from some officers that were in there. That city was literally taken over by looters and rioters a couple nights back. It was taken over. Like it's like something out of like the movie Batman or something. And the cops, several of the cops even said, they're like, I've been here through 9/11, and it wasn't even as bad as 9/11 wasn't even as bad as the other night. What happened in New York City in this last week was worse than 9/11 to a lot of these cops. They were completely powerless. They were overran. They were exhausted. There's nothing they could do. And a lot of these businesses are black-owned businesses, Latino-owned, whatever, right? It doesn't even really matter, And this is crazy what's going on, And for everyone to sit around now and to, come out and start bashing people like Drew Brees and, like who's the quarterback of the Saints, because he doesn't want to, he still doesn't want to kneel for the national anthem. And now you got to come out and you got to slander this dude who has given millions to help black people in New Orleans, who has really dedicated much of his life to help people. Something is desperately wrong in America. There is a sickness in the mind of America right now. And everybody, it ain't the COVID-19. This is a virus that's passed through the media. This is a virus that is passed by watching the mainstream media, by following the trail of hysteria on Facebook and all these other social medias. None of this stuff makes any sense if you were to step back and logically look at what's going on right now. Whatever's going on right now is not going to bring peace, and it's definitely not going to bring justice. That's for sure. I saw a couple of statistics about all this. This guy named Officer Tatum, he brought up that out of 44 million black people in America in 2019, nine black people were shot and killed by police. Well, actually, I don't know if it was shot and killed, but they were killed by police and they were unarmed. 9 out of 44 million. And then he brought up that 3 out of the 44 million in 2020 died that way. So you got 9 in 2019 and 3 in 2020. This ain't no epidemic. It ain't an epidemic. The numbers don't lie. Now, I'm not discounting the death of anybody. I think nobody should die, by the hands of another person, wrongfully at all. I mean, I'm not condoning nothing like that. But what I'm trying to say is it justified then to literally overrun the country like this? I don't think it is. I think there's something seriously wrong here. And, and like I said, I'm not big on the police either, but this ain't the way that it's got to go. This ain't the way that it's going to be reformed. This ain't the way things are going to change. And this ain't going to get rid of racism. That's what I don't seem to understand. This ain't going to get rid of racism. You think any of these protesters are actually going to change the minds of actual racist people in this country? No, actually all they're doing is throwing fuel on the fire. It's crazy, man, just to think about that. Just to realize, like, you ain't changing nothing. So, you know, something else I saw that's really disturbing is, and like I said, and I am not trying to, you know, debate the whole thing about, you know, whether it was right or wrong with George Floyd. You know, I think it's pretty obvious, man. I think whatever happened there, if that was exactly what we see on that video and that wasn't doctored, because who knows these days, but we saw it from multiple views. It's pretty obvious that looks like murder to me, you know. I think it's pretty clear to say that there was excessive force done, and that dude should have known. He should have known. When you kneel on somebody's neck like that, dude, you know if they're dying. And so by no means am I trying to say that this man was not murdered. He was definitely murdered, okay? Now, but think about this. Everybody automatically, it's like as if this is a fact already, that he was murdered because he was black and the guy was white. There could be no other possible reason, apparently, in the minds of millions of Americans. There's no other reason. You know, I want to propose to you this, from my experience with the police, from my experience, you know, in my life, racism is just another form of hatred. People just hate. You know, I was picked on and beat up for all sorts of other reasons growing up. You know, not just because I'm white, but I was also picked on for being white too. You know, I remember getting discriminated by black people. You know, a lot of people don't seem to understand that this is how, depending on the setting, depending on the culture, depending on the people you're around, hatred is hatred. And to paint all this as like that it's always got to be a race thing, to me is absolutely crazy. It's crazy. So like I said at the very beginning of this video, I'm by no means trying to say that there isn't racism. There absolutely is racism. But to say that racism is just to automatically conclude for a fact that this cop killed George Floyd because he was black and this guy's white is insane to me. It's like nobody can stop for 2 seconds and just be like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe dude got killed because guess what? He's a cop and he is on a power trip and he's a murderer. It's just plain and simple. What about that? Maybe it had nothing to do with race. You know, I also saw reports that they knew each other, you know, and they apparently, they could have worked together reportedly for, you know, 17 years or something like that, you know, working as security at this club. So he could have had something against this dude, you know, if that was the case. They had nothing to do with race. So, you know, we gotta stop, and we gotta stop getting pulled left and right and black and white and getting moved all over the place. You know, we gotta start thinking and using our minds, man. And you know, there's one other thing I want to say here real quick, and this is more I'd say on a spiritual note. You know, I'm a Christian. You know, a lot of my videos are orientated around, you know, things, spiritual things. But something is really troubling me about this whole George Floyd thing, about how they're talking about him now. I saw a CNN reporter basically say that they were down there at the crime scene where George Floyd died, and the memorial has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and nobody loots and riots, I guess, right there, because it was quote unquote sacred ground. And I'm like, sacred ground, you know, like, hold up now. And then the way that his funeral was treated, you know, a week ago, if somebody held a funeral where you had a packed house and a lot of those people weren't wearing masks, the media would have shamed you, would have scorned you. But now suddenly, because they got their racial narrative, it is condoned. It is completely condoned to have some kind of funeral now with a packed house with no social distancing and no mass. Riddle me that. How in the world can that happen? But it's like almost like a deification is what they're doing of George Floyd. And this is a very occultic thing that I see going on here of how they're treating the death of this man. Especially when I see thousands of protesters laying on the ground with their hands behind their back, face down in the position that George Floyd died in. And they're laying there for, 8 minutes and was it like 47 seconds or something like that. I'm going to tell you right now, that's ritualistic right there. Right now, something is being done on the minds of this country. COVID-19 was the beginning of a mass ritual that they're putting us through, by locking us in our houses. If you go back and you study the occult, you study how things are done, there's a way that you can affect the psychology of people. There's a way that you can initiate people into certain phases or realms of consciousness, and quarantining is one of them, to isolate people, to break up the normal life. Also, repetitive things being thrown at you through the media is another way to do that. It's conditioning the mind. But then also, you look at the Masonic order and other secret societies. They do these rituals where you basically, you will lay down in a casket. You'll do some kind of ritual that you died. And I see people taking on the identity of this man. It's like this man is being elevated and deified, and people are now coming under in a form of almost worship and ritual to whatever it is that they think this man represents to them. This social justice movement, which, like I said, I don't see it at all. I believe it's basically based largely on lies. It's completely there's no way to prove one way or the other right now what was going on there. And to automatically assume that you somehow are going to bring racial equality by doing all these rituals and believing all these things and protesting is pretty crazy to me. So I know that this may be a controversial thing to some people. Like I said, I'm not trying to play down racism. I'm not trying to act like I know what black people go through in this country. I'm not trying to say none of that. I'm giving a take on, from my point of view, what I've experienced in this life, and right now, what I am seeing by the Spirit of God is not good. We are heading down a wrong way. So, a lot of people that watch my videos are Christians, and what I got to say is be prepared. Be prepared for what's about to come. You're not going to tell me for 2 seconds that this stuff was not planned. And actually, there's one more thing I got to say before I end this video. Is it just so happened that after this whole, protesting and rioting episode happened, everybody's completely turned away now from the craziness that is going on within the different states here in America. Just absolutely trampling upon the Constitution. Through the contact tracing, the way that they are setting up quarantine camps on there. I've looked it all up for myself. Like, look, you can go look up forms for yourself. Look up voluntary compliance or non-compliance forms for the state of Washington. You can go to the government website. Maybe I can leave a link on this video, and you will see in there that it says if you do not basically comply with what they want, I mean, this is a voluntary form. It says that you will be subject to detention and sent to a quarantine facility. This is some dangerous stuff that's going on. This is dangerous stuff we're living in right now, and all the attention got diverted away from all that. Basically, what we have is martial law in this country right now. Martial law has been declared by the governors of these several states. When they do executive orders where they call in the National Guard, okay, that is martial law. That is state martial law. It doesn't have to be on a federal level. People need to wake up. I'll leave some links in the thing about this. But all this race stuff, people need to start understanding that this country has never broke out of slavery, okay? And it's never been about a racial thing. We are all enslaved right now to very, very powerful people that do not care about what your skin color is. They care about power, and they care about fulfilling an agenda. And they control our money supply. They control even the wealthy people that think they're wealthy because they're wealthy by the financial system that they control. And people need to wake up and understand it. People need to start looking into things. Start researching things for yourself and turn off the news. Stop listening to what the news is telling you. Stop consulting media. Stop consulting mediums. You are getting information. You are getting a mind that is not the mind of Christ. You are getting the mind of the Antichrist put on you by consulting these mediums. So I made a whole other video on that whole thing. I won't get too deep into that. So I'm gonna end this right now. But I just gotta say, prepare, man. Prepare. Build your house now, your spiritual house. Get your house in order. Get yourself right with God. If you don't know Jesus, surrender your life to Jesus. I'm telling you right now, it changed my life. And begin to prepare mentally, emotionally, prepare physically, prepare financially, because what's about to come is going to be far worse than everything that we've just experienced in the last couple months here in America. And I'm not going to make any predictions or anything, but I know that it's not going to go well. And I do believe this will pass through, but we're going to have to stand up, and we're going to have to pray, and we're going to have to resist, and we're going to have to unite, especially in the body of Christ. We got to get it together. We got to stop arguing about petty things and stop falling into the psyop that is Facebook, and come together like real people, face to face, and begin to find vision and direction and guidance from the Holy Spirit. So with that, I'll end. God bless you all. Please look into some of these things that I'm talking about. Please begin to do your own research and stop just taking for granted what people say. Thank you all. God bless.